Who did the homework? Yeah, cool. I thought we'd start this morning talking about the homework. Does anyone feel like they want to share what?
Just remind everyone.
Oh yes, so the homework was, if I was more principled or sincere, what changes would I make in my life? Especially in relation to the principles of love, truth, humility, faith, and principled action or loving action. So, does anyone feel like, Kendra, would you like to start us off?
I would pray more.
Pray more? Yeah. All right, let's put some of these on there. Yeah, okay, anything else you gained? Any actions you would change?
There are a lot of actions I would change. I don't know if I could list them all. I think I would.
Okay.
I think I would stop a lot of self-judgment because I would know that it's not a real emotion.
Yeah, not productive one. Yeah. All right. Who else? Alicia?
I would.
Hang on, wait for the microphone.
I would, with prayer and with feeling, I would take more time to do that rather than rush into what I think needs to do.
Yeah.
And
So
I'd consider my choices more.
Yeah.
So putting priority on
feeling
the spiritual matters of life rather than the physical ones.
Yeah, because I've noticed, especially when I've got a time frame, I'm not really considering everything and feeling about it, and I feel that if I'll take more time to feel, I'll actually get the things done more easily.
Yes. Yeah. But there's usually an addictive reason why we busy ourselves, and that's
Exactly.
Yeah.
To avoid feeling.
I want to take more time to feel so that I'm more recognizing my addiction.
Okay. All right. So far we're playing it pretty safe. Yep. Jordan?
Be truthful in all my engagements and relationships and with God.
Yep. Okay. So that one's about with God and others?
Yeah. Oftentimes with God we feel quite like we can be quite straight and honest, but when it comes to our relationships, oftentimes we don't.
Yeah.
So oftentimes when you try to be more truthful in relationships, you start noticing that nobody really wants to hear the truth, and you often really don't want to say it either.
Yeah. Shows you your investment.
Yeah.
And then it would be more loving towards myself and others and God as well.
Yeah.
How does that look though?
That's right. What
does it look like to be more loving to others, for example?
Well, being truthful with them, one, and then honoring their free will.
Yeah. Can I mention one that most of you seem to not do, and that is be interested in other people. Most of you seem only quite interested in yourself, but not very interested in the lives of others. And if you love people, you're interested in them, aren't you?
Yeah.
Anything else?
I got a lot.
Yeah. Some of them too personal. Sometimes many of you we see are very worried about sharing personal things. Which if you think about many of our videos from Australia, everyone's quite open about their personal things. Yeah. But when we travel, everyone's quite closed about their personal things.
Yeah. What if you pass forward to Mandy? You had your hand up?
Being more giving and less taking, and along with that, being less selfish.
How do they look?
Yeah, what does it... I'm going to... let's be really specific.
Can I just say something to all of you? When you deal in generalities with yourself, then you're probably not going to change anything. You've got to be a lot more specific with yourself.
Absolutely, yeah.
Doing things for myself that I am responsible for doing for myself, and not trying to get somebody else to do it for me.
Yep. So what would be an example?
Well, I have a bunch of stuff stuff out in my yard right now from
Yeah.
the summer for my work.
Yeah.
And my husband's pretty upset that it's still laying out in the yard.
Yeah.
And I haven't picked it up and we just got snow.
Yeah.
So hoping it's melted when I get home, and I'm gonna pick that stuff up.
So you must live in Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also have respecting the free will of the people I live with.
Yeah.
Yep, and I haven't been good at that, so being less pushy with my own
Demands.
Agenda.
Yep, my own agenda,
Yeah.
Yeah. So recognizing when I'm starting to do that and just stopping.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Good on.
All right, if we go back to Heather over there and come across to Taylor.
Keep your hand up, Taylor, so.
Okay.
What came up with stuff that encompassed all of those, I would feel more like I'd be more humble about my belief that men are superior.
Yeah.
And then my fear, feel my fear of making arrogant people angry.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of an issue with truth.
Yeah.
And also love of them and of myself.
Yeah. Combines all things, doesn't it, there?
Yeah, and so I would speak up when I feel someone is acting arrogant or feeling superior to me.
Yeah.
Where I live in Utah, it's like the air I breathe is arrogant men, and so I just come to see it as normal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a reason why the Mormon faith, the center of the Mormon faith is in Utah.
Yeah. And then I would also become more sensitive to my feelings of superiority and arrogance that I hold within myself.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Taylor.
Okay, I definitely relate to her because I'm also from Utah, and so that's a hard one. It's a really hard one. But I think overall, it's my addictions. I have an addiction to marijuana. It definitely takes over my life, and I never thought it really was one till I've noticed it, but last night was really hitting me.
Yeah.
And I realized the times that maybe I thought that I've gotten God's love, I was under the influence of marijuana, and so it really rattled my heart, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think that's one addiction. Another addiction would be this, I haven't quite understood it, but just to seek this validation from men and willing to borderline cross boundaries with that.
Yeah.
And it brings me a lot of pain, but again, in Utah, I feel like it's very heavy as to, they see that I'm like a single woman now, and I'm very heavily I want to say influenced, but tempted to become a part of the LDS religion, or like a lot of these men definitely came into my life acting as if they are friendly, but I see that they have more negative intent. And it's very hard for me because I have fear. I don't want to be forgotten or alone, so it's very hard. So I think the addictions.
Yeah, but that's
very good.
It's like very good insights. Cleaning up your kind of emotions and what you allow with men sexually, whether it's like allowing projection or sort of seeking projection in order to feel valid or not alone.
Yeah.
That's a very good insight. And giving up marijuana, marijuana and all drugs really impact on your ability to live in harmony with all of these principles, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
I must make a sort of blanket statement here. Whenever you're on any drugs, you cannot receive God's love.
It would be against
So
God's.
it's just a straight, you won't be receiving God's love.
I unfortunately thought for a long time it got me closer.
No, it will get closer to the spirits, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to God. There's many spirits who want people on earth to take drugs because they share in the experience with the person on earth, and it also allows a much stronger bond between the spirit and the person on earth.
Which is odd because I found my father deceased and he had drank himself to a point of being dead. And I felt the spirits come with me the day that I found them. And I'm not a big drinker, I don't drink,
Yeah.
but oh my gosh, the temptation that
Yeah.
came. So yeah, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, if we go to Boris and then back here to Lara.
So I found that I really need to confront some truth about God. First, that I need to embrace the truth that humility is a choice, not a job.
Mm-hmm.
And that God is a friend.
He's got a friend.
Well, the feelings I got was that he's not an enemy.
I agree
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
That's not the same as being like a best friend. Is God a best friend or is he a best father?
Best father.
Because your friend is sort of on the level with you, and
I found I was seeing God as my father, who was never kind.
Yeah.
So I feel the kindness from God, which I felt from friends.
Which is a lot about releasing the pain and suffering you have about your dad, isn't it? Because if you can release the pain and suffering you have about your father and your mother, then you can start to see God as your mum and dad, rather than seeing God. So a lot of people try to see God as friend, but then that also neglects the concept of God's authority in your life, right? And God does have authority because he made laws, and therefore it is right for him to have authority in your life. He's the creator and not another created being. So in that regard, he will have authority in your life. So this is about seeing God as a loving, kind, considerate, compassionate mum or dad. But
And this will be very good for you, Boris, and I don't want to go deeply into it, but for yourself, you have a lot of competition with your dad, and it has attracted a lot of spirits towards you. You're seeking kind of to be superior in some way in order to get away from this relationship with your dad. So if he'll deal with the emotions in your relationship with your dad, it's going to help you with God, but also to love your brothers and sisters more equally.
So most of you should see also in this examination that unless these things change emotionally, they're not really going to change, are they? You're going to be hard pressed to try and keep up any change if the change is only intellectual. So there has to be some emotional shift, doesn't there, at some point? Yeah,
if we go back to Mandy's example about cleaning up the stuff in her yard, she can go out there and force herself to do it because she knows it's right.
And be angry the whole time.
But well, actually, if you're angry all the time doing it and you let yourself feel through it rather than just like resent, or be bitter. If you were resentful or bitter, then you're not going to make any progress. But if you let yourself feel, wow, I hate doing this stuff, I want someone, and let yourself go into what that's about, then you've got a chance to make an emotional shift. But if you just go out there, robot, okay, I'm going to get through it, that's also not going to change anything. You'll have to do that every time. So, Okay. All right, who's next?
I will go off antidepressants and allow everything that comes while striving to be truthful.
Now, just a comment I need to make about those of you on medication, on prescribed medication. You're going to have to take a lot of care coming off of it, because you need to do it responsibly. And the reason why that's the case is because if there are chemical changes that medication has already affected in your brain, and also, so therefore it's affecting your body systems all through your physical body. And if you come off of these, most of these medications are designed to become reliant on them. And if you come off them sort of instantly, and you're not prepared to deal with the emotions from coming off of them, then you're going to find things pretty difficult for a little while. Of course, the best thing to do is to be prepared to deal with the emotions while coming off of them. And if that's the case, you can come off them fairly rapidly. But you just need to make sure, don't you, that some of them are more, you could say, addictive than others and have stronger effects than others. And if you're not careful, You can cause yourself a lot of difficulty during that phase where you're coming off of them, but you're not dealing with the emotion. And if you try to do that, you're going to get more spirit influenced in that area. So because the spirits around you often are also addicted to those same medications, and they're sharing in the medication with you generally. So if you go off the medication, you've got to be prepared for some spirit attack, and you've also got to be prepared for some feelings that you wouldn't otherwise normally have, even when you were fully off them. And unless you're prepared for those things, it's going to be quite a difficult process. So you probably need somebody who's going to help you manage that process. Does that make sense?
That's what I'm most afraid of. I don't believe I have anybody around me who would support that.
Yeah.
They will.
A lot of times it just needs to be someone you can phone or call.
Yeah, I think that there is, although I have to deal with, I think, projections of them not understanding what I'm doing.
Yeah, I understand.
My husband will...
You've got to find someone who's not going to do that to you. Because otherwise they will just make it harder.
And I've already experienced what it's like to try to go off it, and I went into what's called an emotional breakdown, and I couldn't function.
Yeah.
And that was 14 years ago after I got sober. So I'm just, thank you for your words, because I was debating on, should I just be brave and go cold turkey, or should I try Tate, or should I, and I guess I just need to start feeling about that.
I'm suggesting you need to be kind to yourself about the coming off of them, and loving to yourself about coming off them, and recognise what potentially is going to happen. See, a lot of people, when they come off them, don't acknowledge the spirit pressure they're going to be under, and neither do they acknowledge the emotions that they've been wanting to avoid by being on the medication. And you're going to need to face those two things. And so you might need the help of a person like a psychologist, but it has to be somebody who agrees with you going off them, and instead solving the problems in your life using the emotions rather than solving the problems in your life using medication.
Can I have a spirit psychologist?
Well, you have a guide.
Yeah, you'll have a guide.
A loving spirit psychologist.
Yeah, they will help you. But oftentimes when you're coming off things, you're not that sensitive to their influence. That's the only issue.
And Lara, I think it's good to make the decision that you want to do it, but what Jesus said about being loving towards yourself in that process is so important. Otherwise, you're going to push yourself, and that's not when I say push yourself, I mean you have a tendency to be very harsh on yourself, which is not going to help in this process. You need to have compassion for what's happened in your life, and see what you were avoiding with the alcohol or drugs that you were using before, and then with the medication, and take some reflection time to really know what it is you're going to be facing as you go through this process, rather than just do it. I'm going to do it, and then you
get it over with.
Yes, and then you end up not making that space for the feelings that have obviously been there for a long time in your life that you're trying to manage with various substances.
Yeah.
So
can I say though that what I just said also applies to other drugs as well, whether they're prescribed or not. But just one thing I'd also like to say about drugs specifically is that there needs to be a process where you understand the reason why you needed them in the first place.
Or why you thought you needed them.
Why you thought you needed them in the first place. And something that is common to all alcohol abuse and all drug abuse in terms of non-prescribed drugs, but also drug abuse in terms of prescribed drugs. Something that's common to all of these things is the strong desire and the strong spiritual belief that you should not have to feel a painful emotion, that you should be able to get away from feeling a painful emotion.
And I learned it from my father.
Yeah.
Well, my whole family.
Yeah, that's right. And usually this is a childhood thing. And in addition to that, usually there's either oppressive things that occurred in the childhood or the opposite of oppressive. In other words, a complete tolerance of any behaviour in childhood without there being any correction. It'll be one of those two things. So there's a certain psychology that occurs in childhood and also inside of the person that causes them to be attracted to any drugs of any kind, including prescribed drugs, in the sense of seeing that as a solution to your problems. And
So can we just say we need to deal with the belief?
yeah,
And we talked about beliefs last weekend, didn't we?
yeah,
So I need to emotionally deal with the belief that I shouldn't have to feel
hard things.
Can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
So the paradox that I'm feeling right now is I'm not going to get to those feelings on the antidepressants.
That is true.
But then how do I be loving to myself? And so I'm a little confused.
Yeah. So with any drug that is addictive in its nature, so things like marijuana are more psychologically addictive than are physically addictive, right? But other drugs are, in addition to being psychologically addictive, are also physically addictive. In fact, drug companies and also drug manufacturers who are manufacturing narcotics often try to make a substance that's addictive to the brain chemistry as well as addictive to you emotionally. So there are some things that are not addictive to the brain chemistry but are to the emotion, but that's very few things. Like the majority of things have a double addiction in the sense that they change the brain chemistry and their concept is to actually help you avoid emotion as well. So you become addicted to the avoidance of emotion. And so that's the purpose of the drug. And if for many people who have taken drugs, they've had a history of either alcohol abuse or softer drugs leading to harder drugs and so forth. And the reason why that is because there's a ramp up also of spirit influence in the drug taking. And when there's a ramp up of spirit influence, the net result is the drug has less effect in its current dose, and so you end up taking a higher dose, right? And so this is a common thing that occurs with all drugs as well, where you might start off with quite low doses, only to find in a short period of time that those doses are not as effective as the first time you started it was, and so people start increasing their doses. And the main reason why this occurs is because there's spirit sharing in the effect of the drug, and therefore it's not all actually affecting you anymore, it's also affecting the spirits with you. So the problem with any drug taking of any kind, including drugs that are prescribed generally, is that not only do you have your own emotional avoidance, which is the main reason why you wanted to take the drug in the first place, or you felt you needed to in the first place, but there's also the spirits with you wanting you to continue the behaviour once it begins. And this is why also many people who make the decision to come off drugs go through a psychotic period because they are not aware that the spirits are trying to influence them one way or another through messages being given to the mind of the person. When you take a drug, your will is less engaged. As a result of your will being less engaged, a spirit can influence your will by just passing messages to your mind. Now those messages usually formulate two types of messages. One is a self-attacking type messages. So the spirits want you to harm yourself so that people around you go, oh, they're harming themselves, we've got to put them back on the drug, right? And so the spirits want that to occur. They know that in society, the average response to a person who goes in, I'm not saying dealing with their emotions, but actually who goes into a state of almost say completely spirit overcloaked state, which is what really psychosis is. And anybody who sees that generally says, right, we've got to medicate them, and they whack them back on medication. And that's why during that phase when you start coming off, the spirits want you to go back on. And if you don't go back on, they put more pressure until the point you give up on just dealing with their pressure. And then once that occurs, you will enter a state where you try to get out of your own body, and they then can do things to your body, and which means now you're in a psychotic state, and now anyone around you is just going to say, let's put them back on the drug. Does that make sense? and get them back onto that sort of program if it's a prescribed medication. If it's not a prescribed medication, it's a very similar thing that generally happens. Oh, you just need to go back to the drug and all that will disappear. And to some extent that is true because that's what the spirits want you to do, you know. So maybe I just...
Well, yeah, so what are you going to do? I want to say something about the belief, that's all.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, maybe you say about the belief.
Well, no, you finish.
Well, what I'm saying is any person, so this applies to all of those of you who have been taking things like marijuana and any harder drugs as well that are illicit, but also any prescribed drugs, varying from sort of antipsychotics right the way through to antidepressants and so forth, and even things like lithium and other things like that which affect the brain chemistry as well.
Well, you could even say processed foods in this point as well.
Processed foods, coffee, because coffee is a huge drug. Coming off of tea, coffee is going to, particularly if it's got caffeine. So coming off these caffeine drinks, even, you know, these fizzy soda energy drinks that are full of caffeine, they are purposefully addictive. The manufacturers have created them to be purposefully addictive. And when you come off of them, each of them will have different spirits attached to them that want you to continue doing it, besides your own emotions. And so you're going to have to learn how to deal with your own emotions and deal with the fact that you're getting spirit attack. Right? Now, a lot of people think they're going to be able to deal with their own emotions, but then when they get spirit attack, they're not prepared for that. Right? Now, like Mary and I are under spirit attack every day by millions of spirits, so we're quite used to getting spirit attack. But the average person is not used to it and not used to the methods they employ, which are a lot to do with getting in your head and giving you messages in your head. So one of the things you're going to have to learn to do is not respond to the messages that are in your head.
So if we draw it, like here's Lara coming off whatever substance. So there's two things I'm going to have to do, isn't there? I'm going to have to deal with the belief I shouldn't have to feel hard things.
Yep. Because that's been the attractive feeling that causes a person to be attracted to that substance.
And make it easier.
To make it easier to cope with life, yeah.
Life should be easier.
Life should be easier. You shouldn't have to feel hard feelings. And usually that means in childhood you have had some hard feelings that you don't want to feel. Right?
Yeah, to whatever degree, you know.
Yeah.
And so...
And you can also get psychological help to deal with these things, can't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
But going into this process, I would focus very firmly on the fact that, look, this is going to be my block to actually releasing the sadness or the pain of my past. You know, my pain will come out naturally. It will be released from me once I deal with this belief. So I would go into this process, I would pray about it, I would know, okay, this is going to be hard until I release that belief, but I know what I have to release. It's this.
Yep.
And then my pain will flow. And then the other thing that Jesus is talking about is that there's going to be attack.
And the belief that you should be able to avoid attack is the false belief you need to deal with.
Yeah.
And what did I do to deserve this?
Yes, a lot of times you didn't do anything to deserve it, right?
Yeah.
And for the average person, particularly if you've been attacked in childhood, you start believing it was because of your fault somehow, and that is something you're going to have to address. That's a false belief as well. It's not your fault that you got attacked in childhood. It's that was the bad behaviour, the unloving behaviour of others who did that. So it's not actually your fault, and so you have to work through that emotionally. Stop blaming yourself for it. And start to see that there are some people who just want to hurt children, and they do, you know. And unfortunately, some of you have grown up with them, you know, as parents. Some of the people who want to hurt children, and and in this one here, you can also pray for God's help to prevent the attack while it's happening. So. A lot of people don't have that kind of faith where they feel that they can pray to God because they feel like they deserve the attack. So if you feel you deserve the attack, you're not going to probably pray for God's help to prevent the attack because you feel like you deserve it anyway. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So unless you feel that, so one of the beliefs is I deserve attack, that needs to change to I don't deserve attack.
Yeah.
And so
So we're going to pray about all this. There's going to be a two-pronged approach. I understand. This is what I'm going to do to deal with any substance addiction, actually, whether it's food or drugs or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to pray about the fact that, one, I need to change this belief emotionally. I need to go through some things where I come to believe not only will I need to feel hard things, but I can cope with feeling hard things. It's going to be fine.
And actually, it would be good for me to know how to feel hard things, because that means in the future I'll be able to feel anything and get through it.
I won't be restricted in my life anymore by the fear of pain. So I'm going to deal with that belief, and then I'm going to deal with whatever my response is to attack. So for some people, they use substances because hard things have happened, but they've grown up in an environment where they're taught you shouldn't have to deal with this. Let's use a substance, so that's you, and that if someone's attacking you, you're responsible.
You're responsible for it, and you're not.
And so this is how addiction really forms. Because you sort of start to use a substance, and then you attract spirits who like also the substance, and then they attack you if you try to stop.
You can see with both of those beliefs, it's easy for spirits to influence both beliefs, isn't it? They can influence the belief that you deserve attack, and then they can also influence the belief that you shouldn't have to deal with anything that's hard. It should all be easier than this. So they can do both things, and this is what most people are not prepared for when they're coming off of substances. You see, usually the people helping anybody come off a substance don't believe in spirits and don't believe in their influence. And so when those spirits do influence it, so there's an additional problem. You've got all these words appearing in your mind while you're coming off the substance, and nobody around you accepts that they're actually coming from a source outside of yourself.
No, it's a chemical endowment.
That's right. They all say it's coming from within yourself, from your subconscious or your unconscious or whatever. But actually it is coming from people outside of yourself who want you to remain in a state of addiction. Yeah.
Now, I just want to briefly touch on something that's separate from your experience, but also forms addiction. And this is something that we see in younger generations, which is where they have been taught, I shouldn't have to feel hard things, but nothing really substantially hard has happened. It's just like, oh, something's a bit difficult, I shouldn't have to feel about this. Yep. And so they also have a tendency to form substance addiction as they're growing up, because they're like, oh, life isn't that easy as mum and dad made it, I should be able to get away from this. And their manipulation from spirits is a lot about not so much response to attack, but addiction to approval.
And addiction to superiority, addiction to power, addiction to those kind of things that make them feel good about themselves.
And so they attract spirits who give them these feelings when they're on the substance, and those spirits withdraw those feelings when they're starting to come off the substance. And because they still have that same belief, I shouldn't have to feel hard things, oh, this feels hard, I'm going to go back into the substance. Yeah. So it can happen, substance abuse can happen because legitimately very hard things happened, which is more like your case. But sometimes it's just that we're raising kids to feel like, oh, any boo-boo is hard, any little trouble is hard, and you give them a lot of approval for everything, and then they also end up in it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So it's important to understand the psychology of addiction. Once you understand the psychology, and I don't feel many people on earth actually do understand the psychology, but also you need to understand the spirit attack behind the issue of coming off the addiction. And no one on earth really understands that, for the most part, particularly people who help people with addictions. Most of the time they have no idea of the amount of spirit attack that's behind staying on the addictions and what spirits will attempt to do.
So in your case, you can see how the truth is really, like us talking about the truth of it, that is going to help you a lot through this process. Yeah. And I really encourage you to pray, and at the end of this process, your faith is going to be very
strong.
That's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, and not only that, there's a third thing I would do besides praying to God is to talk to a spirit guide who and ask them to help you when they notice any spirits around you influencing you with thoughts and whatever, and it's getting beyond your capacity, you believe, to deal with, because eventually you'll be able to deal with it, but initially it might be quite difficult. Then can they help you until the point where you're able to stand on your own 2 feet, and then you'll start recognising, these thoughts coming into me, they're not my thoughts. Remember 2 weeks ago in San Diego, in the town, I said to everyone, whenever you say the words you to yourself, the word you to yourself, that's not you saying that.
Like if you're sitting there going, oh, Lara, you're an idiot,
That's not you. And if whenever you say we to yourself, that's not you either. Do you understand? Yeah. Now, so these are ways you can recognise, this is just someone telling me that again. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If we come over to Robert, is it on this topic?
Yes.
Yeah.
You've discussed like sort of the mental psychological effects of the withdrawal process, but physiologically and physically, obviously there will be changes that occur.
Correct.
Can spirits also influence the physiological and the physical symptoms?
They sort of suck off of the symptoms rather than influence the symptoms. So they want you to stay on the substance because of the benefits they get from you being on the substance.
Essentially, they're not going to be with you in withdrawal because they don't want to feel hard things either. They're going to be with you on the drug.
So is it possible that that spirits could have been helping avoid certain physical sensations?
Yes.
And then
it's definitely true.
And then they leave because I have to feel them.
That's right.
Oh,
That's right. Yeah.
okay. So then that might cause...
And if you really set your will here, you'll get rid of those spirits pretty quick, because these kind of spirits generally are not very good at sticking around a person for a very long period of time. When the person has exercised a strong, definite will that they're not going to do these things anymore.
Once you make a heart decision,
and you're willing to deal with the emotion. Most spirits go, well, there's no emotion to manipulate anymore, and it's too hard trying to get you to do it. There's plenty of other people they can get to do it in the world, and so they do. So generally, spirits who are connected to you in this regard are less intensive in the long term than they are in the short term. So in the short term, they're just trying to get you back on it.
Pull out a few things, But if you've made a decision, I'm not responding to that, they'll leave pretty quick. And then, yes, you can be left with some physical symptoms that they were helping you to avoid, just like emotions that they were helping you.
And also you'll be left with some physical symptoms caused by the degradation of your body by the drug itself.
Not just detox.
Right. Yeah, well, there are detoxing, which is getting rid of the, you could say the substance impurities that are now in your bloodstream and affecting you, so that'll take a little bit of time. But there's also the after effects of taking a drug on your mind and also your physiological system, your organs and everything. And many different drugs affect a certain organ more than others, and a lot of them affect the brain more than others. And so you'll find the clarity of thought sometimes difficult. You'll find, and these are things that will improve over time, but you've got to be aware they're probably going to happen and are the result of taking a long-term, a drug for a long term. You know, the brain starts adjusting, and so does your physiology start adjusting to the drugs you're taking. And so over time, what's going to happen is after you come off those substances, even though you've detoxed, you'll find the results of being off them now. There'll be sometimes sort of thoughts that are sort of fuzzy, hard to get clarity sometimes, because there's a brain chemistry that needs to now fix itself, which takes a bit of time. The brain is one of the fastest things to adjust. So the brain normally adjusts within, 6 to 12 months, usually within a year. The brain adjusts. It's rare for the brain to take 7 years to adjust. Every other part of your body will be adjusted usually within 7 years, but some parts of your body will adjust sooner and others later due to the makeup of that part of the body. So there are some parts of your body that are more based upon water and more have more water in those parts of your body, those parts of your body will adjust faster than other parts of your body. You need to learn how to drink a lot of water, like 2 or 3 litres of water a day at least. You need to get a bit of exercise through the process once the process is done, and you want to just help your body, be loving to your body so that it recovers from the long-term effects of taking that particular substance.
All right. Are we going back to homework?
Let's
Is there anything
any
more
more
on
about
this
that
topic?
subject.
Yeah,
Because
so if we
I
go
know a
back-
few of you have taken drugs and all these
So
other
if we
things.
go to Matt over here and Robert over here,
Yeah.
please. Yeah.
Hi, thank you. I'm kind of in a unique situation. Well, not unique, maybe. I'm an administrator at an assisted living, and we take Medicaid folks, so we try to get folks out of the shelters
Yep.
and into an environment where they can actually function.
Yep.
And we do, there are some folks under our care that require certain medications for
Yep.
diabetes and Parkinson's and stuff like that, right?
Yep. Let's separate some of these things, can we? Because diabetes is an interesting problem too. Usually, it's very heavily spirit influenced diabetes, and frequently can be actually completely cured without the need of taking medication at all. When it comes to something like Parkinson's, where you've got a degradation of brain chemistry and brain
It doesn't matter the cause.
Yeah.
It's just different.
a different cause, then of course that's a lot about the brain function and what's happening to the brain function as to why that's happening. And there is a lot involved in diet in that as well. And this is something that a lot of Western civilization, shall we say, is not very interested in the actual causes of many of these so-called diseases. And many of them are not what I would classify as a disease, but rather as a problem with regard to either the emotional state of the individual, the
Physical
habits of the individual, driven by the emotional state of the individual. Now, under certain circumstances, and some of the only ones I can think of are when the person has an intellectual disability. These kind of things then become very difficult to resolve using what I would classify as changes of behaviour or habit. When a person has an intellectual disability, they don't have as much cognitive function and reasoning function, and so it makes it more difficult. But when a person has clarity of reasoning, a lot of these things that we say are diseases that people take medication for are actually not diseases, but rather diseases of the body, but rather diseases of the emotion, like the due to emotion and spirit influence, many of them. And so, and in the 1900s, it was quite, when I say 1900, I mean the 19th century, so the late 1800s, it was well known that many of people's problems were related to spirit attachments. But during the 20th century, so from the time of during the years of the 1900s to now, there's been a constant eroding of any investigation or any research into the effects of spirits and the effects of diet and other things on disease, because pharmaceutical companies have been driving the need to just have a pill, more medication, and so there is not a lot of definite research that's going on with regard to spirit influence or with regard to even habits, in terms of what you eat, what you drink, and the things you should stay away from if you want to be healthy. And because of that, we end up with this sort of world now where a lot of people are now highly reliant on medication. I think in your country, I think 40% of people take antidepressants. Around about that, I think, is the figure. That's a lot. It's an incredible amount when you think about what's actually happening to the brain, but also what's happening to the spirit influence in that, and what that encourages. So if you're running a program, obviously you've got governmental assistance to run these programs. Obviously there's laws involved in running these programs. But I would also encourage things like, let's do some research about particular people who have this disease or that disease. Are there things that can improve their welfare without us having to use more drugs to solve their problems?
What was your question going to be?
If it's in regards to the homework last night, like to make the immediate change now, like I feel like I'm walking away from a bunch of people that, especially like the IDD folks, the intellectual disability folks, that.
Why would you walk away from
I wouldn't walk away
Why
from it.
would you walk away? What are you saying?
Well, supporting anything like drug related, like if people are relying on certain drugs to trigger dopamine so that way they can function like the Parkinson's drug, like carbidopa.
Yeah.
I would, like, if I don't support it and it's not in line with God's principles, right?
To give the drug, you mean?
To give the drug to them, like finding another solution. I suppose I could do that while I'm in this field,
correct.
but I'm also not like a doctor, and we like you mentioned earlier, we rely completely on physicians. We're like, we're just the little elves, and the doctor is Santa, right? So,
So I would try to find some doctors who are willing to do this research, and like it requires effort, and to love people requires effort. To be frank, like when I say effort, a lot of people have been very unloved, and the reason why people go towards medication generally is because it requires less effort. So basically, fundamentally, the reason why people are suggesting these things to people who have unfortunate circumstances is for the large part because it requires in the part of the people helping them less effort. And so, to do things in a loving way is going to require more effort, and the average person doesn't feel they have the energy to put that kind of effort in. But that requires getting a team of people together who are all on the same page, and also all understand the problems associated with whatever their industry is, and then also all understand too what the influences are, not just physical influence, but emotional ones and spiritual influences. And then once they educate themselves, they can do a lot of good for all of these people who are in unfortunate circumstances. So, we have a lot of friends who are working in the same kind of field as yourself, and they are. It's interesting because they are attempting through their interactions with the people they're working with, and also through the medical profession, they're attempting to have new research, and they're attempting to influence people down another road and just see where that takes them, and do experiments. And when I say not on people, I'm saying do experiments with diet and whether that improves things and so forth. Things that are not potentially have a dangerous outcome experimentally, but things that are actually just logical to apply. And in the end result, they find that the people who really want to change their life feel very attracted to doing these things, whatever problem they face. And that means then there can be an improvement of the situation. So you're not prescribing the medication, you're not a doctor prescribing these medications. You are dealing with the people that have got the results of them.
And it's a complex situation that these people are in as well, isn't it? It's not someone who's got a regular home and a regular job who's just taking some medication. There's a complex set of social and emotional and physical issues going on.
And spirit issues going on.
Yes.
Frequently. As you probably know, you often see the person influenced, right? And you often see this, we see it in children and adults many times. It's quite obvious what's going on in many cases. It's just that the average person in the scientific or medical community doesn't want to accept what's going on because of their belief systems, because they don't believe in an afterlife, and they don't believe in spirits, and they don't believe in God, and they don't believe in emotions, dealing with emotions either. So, you know, a lot of their belief systems preclude them ever finding a solution.
And even if those positions were out there, the state still wouldn't pay for it.
That's true. That's very true. But that can all be changed by people.
All change, yeah.
So that, you know, a lot of, as you probably know as well, a lot of people who are sincere are looking for solutions, and they know that the current solutions are not working. So the situation is really ripe for adjustment if someone's brave enough to begin the adjustment process with the group of people. And really it gets down to, a lot of times, to that, whether you're brave enough to follow the leadings of your knowledge that you already have, along with taking a scientific approach to it, along with dealing with this, you know, taking a scientific approach to dealing with emotion, and taking a scientific approach to dealing with spirit issues as well. Yeah.
Yeah. But if I was in your position, I would be praying a lot to be shown possibilities and ways that I can actually be a part of change.
But also pray a lot to find other people who want the same change. And research, are there other people out there who want the same change? Because you'll find there are a lot. And a lot of them are not allowed to speak up very, you know, powerfully because of obviously government support and other things, but you'll find them eventually, and then you can start working together.
Yeah. Okay, someone else had their hand up about this same issue. Yeah, Robert? Yeah.
Hey, Jesus. In regards to those thoughts of you know, you can't do that, or you know, you're referring to you yourself.
Yeah.
Is it even possible to hear your own thoughts?
In terms of a voice, no, it's not possible to hear your own thoughts. Your thoughts are not generated through your hearing, through any oral pathways that are in your spirit body or in your physical body. They're generated by your spirit body's brain, and they actually are triggered by soul emotions. When it comes to hearing the thoughts of others, yes, of course you can hear them orally, both in spirit form and in physical form. And those thoughts, you know, obviously all of you are used to hearing the thoughts of others through your ears, because that's how most people communicate with each other. But many of you are not used to the idea that your spirit body has ears and it's hearing things too, and those things are going into your brain as well, and they are generating thoughts. You know, those thoughts are being expressed to you from other people. So, yeah, it's about understanding how the human is made, as to how these thoughts originate, how they enter you. They enter by choice, by your choice, your openness to receive them. And so what actually happens is there is a thought. When a person expresses a thought, whether it's verbally or just a thought, the thought is a thought package, and the package of thought goes to the other person who they're expressing the thought to or about. And it goes to them, and the other person has the choice to receive that package or not, right? But the majority of people on earth are taught that you've got to listen to everything. You've got to, you know, assess everything. You've got to be afraid of everything. So you've got to know everything that's going on around you. And this kind of belief systems cause you to accept every thought, and almost accept every thought as if it's your own, right? Which is not what, you know, the intent is. The intent is that you would be educated at a young age to determine the difference between your own thoughts and somebody else's, and your own feelings and somebody else's.
Okay. Yeah, your own. Maybe 3 years ago, I thought to myself, it shouldn't be possible that I can hear my own thought. And you know, one day, like, I don't have racing thoughts, but like 2 years ago, I was having all these racing thoughts.
Sorry.
And I was just like, will you all just shut the hell up?
Yeah.
And like, it was almost like I couldn't. I literally screamed this out loud.
Yeah.
And I was like, that felt good. I was like, where did those thoughts go? But
well, yeah, it went to some spirits who were bothering you, obviously.
Wow.
And for a moment they paused and did shut the hell up. based on their own addiction, I'd say it won't last very long. You know, and they often get surprised when you first talk to them, but after a while they just go back to the same methods they use it as long as there's an emotional opening in you for them to use it.
Thank you. All right, Vijaya, just keep your hand up so that that's it.
We're still discussing homework, or?
And we finished on the drug and substance questions.
Oh no, I'm not that. So one of the
homework. Oh yeah, no. I'm asking the audience if they're finished.
Sorry.
Yeah, and then we'll come back to homework. So if we go across to Calista.
Can I say something about what he said about
Sure. Yeah.
Medication issue. So I wrote a lot about the practice of medicine, what God's ideas on that would be versus what is my current understanding of the practice of medicine.
Yeah.
And I recognize and realize, as you said, which I have already been feeling a lot over the last several years, that it takes a lot of effort to love, and to love in the context of being a physician,
yes,
to actually honor the patient's will at the level that it is. And also, I had to deal with...
But also honor God's principles.
Yes.
More than the patient's will.
More than the patient's will. And also, to be able to... I had to deal with a lot of resistance I had around my colleagues and their lack of empathy, or as I perceived it.
Yeah.
And then I had to revisit all the beliefs, the false beliefs that we imbibe around it's wrong for someone to suffer, or that pain itself is the problem, which is very much indoctrinated into us.
Yes, it's a big part of a doctor's job is ease suffering and pain, but on a physical level.
Yes. And many times I thought I should abandon it, and then I realized, no, I need to be here because I actually need to be the place that I could try and be part of the change rather than give it up and find something else to do, or be a lackey for someone else's way of doing things, because that's kind of what I would have a choice to do, have my own practice versus work in an establishment which would take care of everything for me. And the system has a lot of problems with it. The patients have a lot, they've been programmed. I mean, people come in and they tell you what they think you want to hear. So when you say, no, I want to hear everything, they don't see the relevance. And if you read my reviews on the web, they'll go, oh, she said my heartburn is related to my relationship to my father or my mother, and I have no connection. She's whatever, they either love you or they hate you. So you have to go through all of the trials and tribulations. Because faith is actually the biggest part, that helps. Faith in their ability to heal, which is what I'm trying to incite within them. But they also have to have some amount of trust in the fact that what we're saying is true, is going to make a difference.
That's right.
And ultimately, you do have to respect people's free will choices. I don't mean that you have to meet their free will demands, but it is an individual choice to deal with your own pain, and you can't force a person into that. So it's a part of your...
But also it's an individual choice to not support them, avoid their own pain.
Correct, yeah.
So, we have plenty of people who talk to us, who want us to support them in their own pain, and we won't engage them as a result, because they want to continue staying where they are. And so at some point you've got to exercise, the more connected with God you are, the more connected with love you are, the more you realise what's actually going on, and then you know the best thing to do in each circumstance. And, but it does require, we know quite a few doctors, we know quite a few people in the medical profession who have listened to Divine Truth, but they all struggle with the, I would say, the personal, emotional issues they personally face about approval and acceptance, and also their income. Some of them are worried about losing their income, of course, and things like that, and so often they make compromises based upon that as to how they deal with their patients. And we can't agree with that. That's out of line or out of harmony with God's principles. So, it's the same with every profession. Every profession on earth generally has a bit of love in it. Many of them do. But also many of them have quite a lot of sin in them as well. And you can change if you're in a profession, you can recognise where the love is and where the love isn't, and you can change it so that the love is there. But that does require bravery, because the average person on earth, as we keep saying, is in the hells. That means the average professional is in the hells too, and the average professional doesn't believe they are, but they are. And so at the end of the day, any changes you do make are generally going to be opposed by your peers, and that's a process you need to go through in order for change to occur.
And honestly, the mental health professionals are the worst, because they are even more heavily programmed and more heavily within the cult of what is being taught about, you know, I don't
know if I agree they're the worst.
I don't know.
We've met many professionals of all kinds, and a lot depends upon upbringing, belief systems, as to how a person goes. Now, one of the things we do notice about many mental health professionals is many of them are there because they have some desires to avoid their own emotional pain, and so they like to or enjoy helping other people avoid theirs. So that is a problem that many of them face, but I don't feel it's all of them. Some of them we've met have been more opposite to that, where they're actually quite confused about what's happening, and they know that the things they're doing don't really work, and they are looking for solutions. They just don't know what the solutions are.
I myself was a mental health professional for 8 years,
yeah.
So I worked in that industry.
And they're heavily regulated. I mean, there's much scrutiny.
Yes, I agree
very
with
heavily regulated, and I have full empathy for that, because the reality is to support somebody on a journey of any kind of mental, any drug that affects, alters chemistry, requires a lot of conviction on the part of the patient, but also a lot of faith on the part of the professional that they're doing the right thing. And
the reality is most patients want a quick fix. They want a medicine fix. They want a pill fix. They don't want to have to work through a painful emotion. And that is the reality, and that's why medical professionals are often called to give them that emotion, and that's also why drug companies manufacture them, because they know the average people would rather take a pill than deal with something more deeply than that.
I mean, we could talk a lot about this, but I feel like it's a cyclical issue as well. The medical profession in the West is very patriarchal. It's very much involved in telling people what historically for many years,
telling people
what they need, telling people what, and so there's sort of this cyclical thing that happens where people want that, but also then they're given that again and again. And my own grandparents, if a doctor said something, that was like God had said it. You know, this is not that far back in our history. This very kind of patriarchal idea that you don't know what you need, these people tell you what you need. And so I think there's a lot of shifts that are required, that are deeply like spiritual and emotional shifts that have to happen on the part of people who practice medicine, actually.
Yeah.
Because that's a part of your training, is actually to give people that sense that you're here to rescue, that you're here to tell, that you're here to, and I understand you're working on that yourself, but within your profession that's still very prevalent.
If you look at the Hippocratic Oath, a lot of what's happening in medicine today doesn't meet the requirements of the Hippocratic Oath.
Not at all.
Certainly not ethical. And when you start to understand all the influences upon a person, not ethical in hardly any way sometimes. And so, you know, I think there are plenty of opportunities in the medical profession to change all that. And even if somebody does say, oh, you're not doing the right thing, you say, well, no, I'm abiding by the Hippocratic Oath that I've made a commitment to, you know what I mean? And in this way and in that way, I'm doing that, you know. And I think there's a lot of ways for things to change in the industry, but I think we don't need to say much more about it, because the real issues are problems with regard to truth, love, humility on the part of the profession, and faith on the part of the profession and the person that God created you with the ability to deal with everything, and to feel any emotion. And you can see that if a person had those feelings, then it would be relatively easy to do things. So if it was me on medication, if I was on medication, I would go off the medication. I might, depending on the type of medication, I'd research it a bit initially to make sure that I might have to come off slowly, just to make sure that there's no strange physiological reactions, so heart stresses or stresses on organs and stuff like that, the liver and the kidneys in particular, you know, so when it starts detoxing. But I'd have a diet that supports that, but I'd also deal with the spirit influence that I'd be under, dealing with that, and so forth.
And the sort of causal emotional reasons and beliefs that caused you to seek the substance in the first place.
That's right, yeah. For 13 years I lived with a person diagnosed as manic depressive, and so I understand all of the justifications for such diagnosis. But once you understand the spirit influences as well as the emotional influences in the person, you can see that all of them are able to be cured.
Yeah. All right, Felista, and then we'll come to Judith over here. Just keep your hand up, Judith.
I just wanted to ask God's definition of the word sincere.
Okay, we're still on this substance abuse issue though, so we're going to probably not answer that right now.
Yeah.
Okay, Judith?
Yeah, I just had a question about once you start to feel the grief over the cause of the substance abuse, and it's a false belief, like a projection from your parents.
Yeah.
How do you know you're feeling the grief, or you're feeling your parents' grief, or you're wallowing in it? I was feeling a lot of grief this morning, and I don't know whose it is. I think it's mine.
It doesn't matter whose it is. If you're feeling it, you need to feel it.
Yeah. So the principle of humility would say, if I feel something, I need to feel it. When I get to the end of it, I'll probably understand more about it, but I won't understand going in, and it's not worth figuring it out.
Yeah, can I just say one thing generally about feeling emotions? When you don't want to feel them, you come up with lots and lots of reasons why you shouldn't have to feel them, including they might not be mine. Right? And so why should I have to feel them? Or somebody else caused them, so they should feel them, or whatever. Emotions are stored in your soul, not somebody else's. You need to learn how to be open to them and feel them, and that is a thing that applies right across the board to everyone, anybody. Now, if you're in this state where you go, oh, but what if it's my mum and my dad's grief? Do I really have to feel that? Well, if you're in a state of grief, then obviously not all of it is just your mum's and dad's grief. It's yours. So feel it. The reality is, if Mary just has grief and I don't, Mary could be sobbing her heart out and saying a whole heap of things that are really distressing for Mary to express, and I won't feel distressed at all. Once I've dealt with my grief, I won't feel distressed at all.
And just be mindful too that I'm not going, like I thought I was talking to people about it, and that gets me out of the grief. Right?
That's right. Every time you want to talk to people about your grief, you are purposely trying to get out of your grief. Yeah, most of you love talking about your feelings. That means you're not having them. Because when you have them, you don't feel the need to talk about them anymore. You just don't talk about them anymore with anybody. Now, they may ask you what experience you went through. So by my experience, as soon as you start talking about them, you're not feeling it anymore. That's been my experience. And it's also the experience of everyone we've helped. As soon as you start talking with other people about your feelings about a thing, you are doing it to get commiseration, approval, acceptance, and a lot of other addictions met. And so you're never going to get to the bottom of the feeling doing that. Also, when you're talking about a feeling but you haven't felt it yet, you have no idea what you're really talking about because you haven't felt it yet. Yeah. You understand? So the average person thinks, I know what this feeling is. No, you don't. You don't know what a feeling is until you're done feeling it. You have no idea before then at all. Many of you think you do. You don't. You don't know until you've done the feeling, right? The nature of feelings are such that your mind is only capable of understanding the feeling once the feeling has been felt. Before then, the mind is trying to avoid the feeling.
Trying to identify it to control it.
Trying to re-identify it, rename it as something else, so you can avoid the feeling. Your mind will do hundreds of things to avoid a feeling. Right? If you have an intent emotionally to avoid a feeling, you'll do all sorts of things in your mind to avoid that feeling, including, oh, it's all too hard, it's all too difficult. In other words, you'll create corrupt faith just to avoid the feeling. You'll do all sorts of things to avoid your feelings. And your mind is great at just responding to the demands of your soul to avoid the feeling. And your mind is happy to tell you a bunch of lies while you believe it's all logical. Right, in your own head you believe it's all logical, but it's just a bunch of lies because you just didn't want to feel the feeling. You know? So every time you want to share your feeling, every time you want to, help somebody else with their feelings, every time you're not feeling feelings. Every time you want to identify the feeling before you feel the feeling, you're not feeling feelings. You're never going to feel a feeling that way. Yeah. Right? So there are just so many things that humans need to be educated about feelings, that it's much more simple than what everybody thinks. All you have to do is be like a child and feel the feeling. Then you will know what it was about. You don't have to talk about it. You don't need anybody else to share it. You don't need anybody else to help you. You don't, because you're the pinnacle of God's creation. Like, you can handle it. They're your own feelings, for goodness sake. You can handle them.
They're already
there. You're already handling them one way or the other. So that you can handle them, and whatever they are, how hard they are, you can handle all of them, without exception, right? But the average person is told from a very, very young age that this is not possible, and mothers and fathers say by their own behaviour that it's not possible, because most mothers and fathers don't do it. And so most of you end up growing up in this really weak state which says to yourself, I can't handle it, I have to know it beforehand, I have to control it, I have to do all of these other things in order to have the feeling. I need some help, I need some medication, I need whatever. And this is all due to a lack of education about how you've been designed in your soul to handle feelings.
Yeah. And it really changes your relationship with God when you understand I can have my feelings. Because before then, we're really approaching God like we're approaching all the other people we're talking to. Like, oh, could you help me with this feeling? Or can you? And God is never going to participate in that until we learn that I can have my feelings. My feelings are in me. So, yeah.
You'll only understand your feelings when you're done with them.
Yeah.
That's when you understand them. You will not understand them beforehand. Stop trying. You will not understand. You'll guess, and often you will guess wrong, but you won't understand. You will only understand when you're done feeling them. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, Sai and then Naya. Naya, is that right?
In relation to the relation between diseases and spirit influence, and how you mentioned that in the late 1800s or 1900s there was some research. One of the things that I struggle in terms of understanding that is, before Divine Truth, I've watched some mediums do this, and people who go to mediums have this general feeling that, oh, if a medium can connect to my ancestor and share this one thing that only we two know, that emphatically proves to me that the medium is doing the right thing or connecting to spirit, and I can trust the medium. And so, along those lines, how hard would it be for all the doctors and even for myself asking this question to emphatically prove in a manner that appeals to everybody as scientific the existence of spirit influence?
Okay, so we're back to Sai's favourite topic is, please help me to avoid my lack of faith. we trace Sai, all of Sai's questions. This is just like, I don't have any faith, fix it for me. That's really this question, isn't it?
Sai, you know in your own, you're a software man, right?
Yes.
You program. You know that when you understand a programming language, you have to firstly learn it, don't you? You have to learn the language. And then when you learn the language, you know what the language is capable of doing. Then you can put together a whole heap of things, can't you, to build that language to get it to do a thing for you. Right? The same applies to really any form of endeavour. You've got to first learn the principles that apply to that form of endeavour. It's like learning a language. So when it comes to your soul, the people who are channeling people's souls, which are really, people who are mediums, most of them have not learnt the science behind it. They have just been able to do it since childhood, and they've just listened to spirits tell them things, but they do not understand any of the science behind it.
And this is the problem that I have with mediumship as it occurs on Earth in most cases now, is that some mediums can tell you that one thing that only you and that person knows, but that doesn't mean that that person that they're channeling knows everything. They just know this one thing. And so a lot of times you will trust more the medium who gives you the one thing. You trust that
and by
spirit.
the way, the medium knows next to nothing as well.
About the spirit life and the spirit existence.
Because I've done there's no science done by the medium to understand how it all works.
And
we met mediums all the time, and they are completely wrong with how everything works in the spirit world and between spirits and people on Earth. They have the ability to transmit some information at times. Frequently, not the information the spirit is trying to share, by the way. And there's a whole slew of reasons why that is the case, because they don't understand the science about it. Now, this group isn't about understanding the science of mediumship.
No.
At some point, we will do a group about understanding the science behind mediumship and how it all works, right? And understanding the laws that are involved with mediumship. At some point we will. But what I'm going to say to you is, if you do not understand the laws involved, which is like a language, like a programming language, if you don't understand the structure of the laws involved with anything you do, you are not going to be able to do it very well. Now, this is the problem faced by the scientific community and the medical community. The medical community does not understand the soul. It doesn't understand the spirit body. It only has a bare rudimentary understanding of the physical body, and it doesn't understand any of the influences from the soul or the spirit body on the physical body. And they're trying to cure the physical body without the understanding, right? And there's no science anymore to get the understanding. It's all just like pharmaceutical science. It's not science relating to the human soul and how the whole soul works. And because there's no science, there's not going to be a solution. There's no resolution of what God's truth is. And remember, God's truth is scientific. It's always right. So if you can understand the science behind how the soul works, then you'll understand what research you need to do to help the body, for example, repair itself and so forth. If you understand the science behind mediumship, then you understand what's capable then with proper mediumship versus what's happening today, which is a very, I would call it like, it's really like a 1-year-old child trying to talk. That's what we see most mediumship about today.
We could go into the whole discussion about mediumship here, but a lot of people have so little faith on Earth that just the proof that life exists, that life continues after the passing of the physical body, that is all people are really interested in, and that's like wowing for them. And for us, that's nothing. That's okay, but let's get on to get on to the important matters of what is that life like, and how does this life on Earth affect that life, and those things. And so I think that
what I was saying, the principle that I just talked about getting the science behind things, it's a very important thing. What we're trying to do is we're trying to teach you the science behind love, behind faith, behind truth, behind humility. That's what we're really trying to teach you. God's truth, the science behind how that all works. Not the mathematics yet, because you're not going to handle the mathematics. Right? We can just talk about the rudimentary science involved in that. And if we can talk about the rudimentary principles involved in other things, such as, curing the human body, such as spirit discussions and all those other things too, at some point we want to do that. But without the rudimentary understanding of the very, very fundamental principles, which most people who are listening to Divine Truth do not have, you're not going to understand much else. Because it's all based upon those fundamental principles. As any further research done needs to be based upon those fundamental principles.
So maybe one day you will design a research project that can help with this, but you need to first understand the
You need to understand the principles.
Have them in your soul.
That's right. Yeah.
And Judith's question, how effective is I mean, you said that talking about feelings is not going to help, but
no.
There's psychotherapy and psychologists engaged in talk therapy, and
yep, it doesn't work most of the time.
Yeah, if you've listened to any of the talks that we've given on this tour, we've talked a lot about sin and about the process of awareness and awakening. The process you go through from a point of awareness of sin to awakening to it. The only thing I would say is that talk therapy and different kinds of psychotherapy sometimes help people to gain awareness, but that's not the work
I don't even think that.
of awakening.
I don't agree with Mary on that.
Yep, what do you want to say about that?
The only thing that helps a person gain awareness is to release the emotions in them that cause them to have no awareness.
Slow down, say that again, please.
The only thing that helps you gain awareness of anything is to release the emotions that prevent your awareness. Right? So to do that, you're going to have to go through some feelings. Now, so the only talk therapy that actually works is talking about the principles, not talking about your emotions. That doesn't work because you're not going to have emotions until you understand the principles.
Yeah.
You're not going to have them. You're going to think you're having them and you won't be having them.
So do you disagree that talk therapy or psychotherapy, I've certainly had that experience where it's helped me to gain awareness, but not about talking about
I disagree with you. I don't feel it has helped me gain awareness.
Okay.
Yeah. What helped me gain awareness was going through an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And coming to trust that the emotion works, going through the emotion works. Coming to terms with my own beliefs is what gained awareness. So what I mean by that is, if I have a belief inside of me that I shouldn't have to deal with emotion, while I have that belief, I'm not going to deal with any emotion I talk about.
No.
Right? And I'm going to talk to Mary because I need the addiction met that she needs to listen to me. And I want somebody who understands me better than I understand myself, because if I understood myself, I'd feel my emotion and then I'd understand myself, right? But I want Mary to understand me better than I understand myself, because I've been taught from a child that that's what love is. Love is somebody getting me, somebody really understanding me well. That's what love is, right? Someone listening to me, that's what love is. So I've been taught all of these things. None of them are true, right? And none of them are going to help you. And this is why, like Mary, as you know you've been locked up for 15 years with some emotions. And this is one reason why. And it's the same with many of you. You've been locked up for years and years about emotions. And the main reason why is because you sort of think that if I talk about it and somebody listens to me and somebody's kind to me and somebody appreciates me, somebody understands me, somebody gets me, then I'll be able to deal with it. Right? If I go to a psychologist and they sort of help me with some talk therapy, I'll be able to deal with it. No, they won't, because they'll be always working with your resistance. Always. It's going to be everything they get to eventually is just going to be your resistance. And until you deal emotionally with your resistance, nothing will change. I can't emphasize that enough. Nothing will change. You'll have these little smidge of thinking that you got something. You'll have a little thing of, oh, I think I'm more aware of that now. Isn't that wonderful? Nothing has fundamentally changed. When things change, you will change your life tomorrow. When something actually changes, from then on, you will change and you'll do some major changes. That's what will happen. And the reason why that does not happen is because everyone wants their addictions met while they're dealing with emotion. They want addictions met. And every one of these things of needing someone to hear me and needing to talk to somebody and needing to express myself to somebody, needing that they get me, needing that they understand me, all of these things are not going to help you. Not a single one of them has helped me.
This aspect has helped me though.
Yes, somebody sharing the truth with you helps you. But even then, you won't accept that truth until you deal with an emotion.
Yes.
Even then.
Of course.
So there's many truths I have shared with Mary over the years, and she still does not accept many of them because the emotion hasn't been addressed.
Certainly, but
There's no
there are
truth. Yeah.
but the certain without the presence of truth, there are certain things that I would never have.
Yeah, but that's not talk therapy, is it? See, talk therapy is where you listen to somebody and you talk to them. You listen to somebody.
Well, I guess it's how you define it.
No, that's not the sharing of the truth. The sharing of truth is I tell you the truth and that's it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
And I don't care about one way or the other whether you hear me or accept it or not. That's what the sharing of truth is.
Yeah.
The sharing of truth is just somebody telling you the truth and just letting it settle with you. You've got to ponder about it. It's your responsibility to feel it. It's your responsibility to analyse it. It's your responsibility to prove to yourself whether that is a truth or not. Right? Not mine.
Yes.
Right. So someone sharing love with you will help you. In other words, that they just be loving with you. Someone just being truthful with you will help you. Someone having faith in how things actually work. In other words, being convinced inside of self, not just faith, like as reality, they know these things work, and if their conviction can help you sometimes, right? But none of that is talk therapy. None of that is, I listen to you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
sure.
It's all sharing something with you, not listening to you, right? This is how God is with you. God already knows what you feel, so He doesn't even need to listen to you. He's already heard you. He doesn't need. You don't need. The reason why you talk to God about your feelings is because you're the one who needs to understand them. God already knows them. You're the one who needs to get them. You understand? So one reason why you might share with God in that regard is that you need to understand them. And sometimes I've sat down and just listened to Mary, giving her the gift of my time, and she's explained to me all of her feelings, right? And not because I need to do that, but because I know she needs to do that so that she can understand them, right? But even then, if you don't feel them as you know, you don't really understand them. And so at the end of the day, you can talk and talk until you're blue in the face, and you won't understand them, right? You only understand them after you've felt them.
Yeah, and I think that me talking at you hasn't helped me that much, except in those areas where truth has been given to me or I've felt love from you in that place. But I think we talk less and less about things.
It hasn't helped with the breakthrough of many things.
Not at all.
The breakthrough is an individual process that only a person themselves can have.
Yeah.
And no amount of anybody talking to me has ever helped me have a breakthrough.
And also it diminishes the connection, like it diminishes the education you're trying to receive from God. It's actually trying to get, when you're in that addictive state of needing to talk about yourself and your feelings, you're trying to get something from someone on earth rather than be in that relationship with
and
God.
And while you're in an addiction, the purpose of the addiction is to avoid the emotion. So it's like, I need Mary, if I need Mary to listen to me and I start talking and say, I want to talk to you about my feelings, I'm already not talking to her about my feelings. I'm in the addiction of needing her to listen to me. So I'm not actually feeling that addiction, I'm in it, I am living in it. And so in the moment that I say I need her to listen to me, I'm actually in my addiction. And when she says, no, I don't want to listen to it, I get all offended. And I go, I'm now doubly in my addiction. I'm not only now in the addiction of needing her to listen to me, but now I'm angry with her as well that she didn't, right? And both of those things are not helping me deal with the actual emotion I have. Both of them don't help me. I'm just going to keep staying in the sin of my emotion in that place until I learn that I don't need Mary to listen to my feelings. I need to have them. I am responsible for them. I can deal with them. I must deal with them if I want to be happy. I need to. So, not Mary. Mary doesn't have to do anything. She doesn't have to listen to me. She doesn't have to acknowledge me. She doesn't have to validate my identity. validate my life. She doesn't have to do anything for me. And the less she does for me, the more likely I am going to probably deal with my feelings. And the more she does for me, depending on, her motivation, but the more she does for me, the more likely, if my motivation is to avoid my feelings, the more likely I'm going to use what she does for me to help me avoid my addiction. Right? And this is where I feel most people are not hearing God's truth. This is God's truth I'm sharing with you. The reason why I've said it quite so firmly is the average person on it does not understand it at all. Right? But the reason why it needs to be said firmly is because God is trying to teach you to be a completely self-responsible being. A person who knows themselves, knows their own will, understands it, understands their feelings, understands their emotions because they feel them. They don't avoid them, they feel them. They don't use addictions to avoid them, they feel them. This is very important to understand. Anybody who hears divine truth, it is such an important thing to know. And unless you do that, you will not make adjustments. Now, it is fantastic that someone might come along and love you and show an interest in you. That's a gift they give you. It's fantastic when someone comes along and shares some truth with you. That's a gift too. If someone comes along in their humility and their faith and shows you what humility and faith looks like, that's a gift too. But unless you go through your own emotional experience, you won't even understand any of those feelings. Love, truth, faith, or humility. You won't even get them. Right? So the only thing that really works is education. Not talk therapy, not some kind of other therapy. And let's look at the word therapy. It implies that the person helping you knows more than you do. They don't. They know just as least as you do because they've not done these things either, for the most part. Right? So no therapy really helps you with the exception of education. So somebody educating you to feel, that would be fantastic. They don't have to listen to you, you have to listen to them in order for them to do that. Right? Someone educating you about truth, what the truth is, that's fantastic. You don't have to have any comment because they're telling you what the truth is and you just got to listen and assess. Right? Someone who loves you, love is a feeling. So not your addiction getting met, it's a feeling on their part. So if they care about you, share truth with you, and so forth, that will help you, but that is education. Education helps you. But it's a different type of education than we have on earth. Education we have on earth is intellectual education. This is soul education. That's what's going to help you. Soul education. Education about how your soul works, how the universe around you responds to how your soul works. That kind of education will help you. Anything else is just you in an addiction trying to get the addiction met one way or the other. Make sense? Yep. Important. If there's anything you take away from this entire weekend, just the last 15 minutes.
You've obliterated my question about the therapy industry. My whole family's in therapy.
Yep.
I'm in marriage therapy. My kids are in therapy.
Yep.
But I guess I'm wondering, is there any good purpose in it? You say no talk therapy. I get that. My son was suicidal. Is that not where he goes for that? Because I don't know if
Your son needs education, not therapy. He needs to get to the stage where he understands how to deal with his feelings. Right?
Can the therapy industry change?
It could. Greatly.
See, and this is where I would like to discuss this with you. I'm not disagreeing with anything you just said.
Yep.
But what I see is there's a lot of people who lack any self-awareness. Anything.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And this is
so
where...
we educate them how to have awareness.
And this is where I feel like truth is so important. Essential. In that process.
Yeah.
So if we don't call them therapists, like, you know, that industry.
Let's look at the history of therapy. Therapy is basically the presumption that they go along for 4 years, get educated in their mind about how to deal with specific problems, because there's manuals that help you deal with these specific problems. And if you follow those manuals dealing with specific problems, then the end result is going to be everybody's going to get cured, or at least cope with their problem. Yeah, is that what we're observing? No. What we're observing, particularly in Western culture, is the problems are getting more and more and more severe. That's what we're observing. So there's a lot of missing information. In other words, there's a lot of missing truth. So in order for a person to be able to be correctly educated themselves in order to help another person, the person who's helping you must have cleared away all of their childhood injuries, all of their false beliefs, and be able to educate you with truth as to what is the truth about a matter. That's what they're going to have to be able to do. Now, there are some, what I would classify as therapists, who are more humble and they recognise that. And those particular therapists, if they were more aware of what what education they can get, they would greatly benefit by helping other people, in their help of other people. Firstly, they'd have to help themselves. Unfortunately, most therapy, and this is one thing that really disturbs me, most therapists are getting paid to give you therapy. So, unfortunately, most therapists are getting paid to continue the problem with you. Now, whether that's having an effect on them or not, well, that's up to them to sort out. But what I find disturbing is most doctors are getting paid because of your misery. In fact, they need people in misery to get paid. And many doctors actually earn more than anybody else on this planet. Right? The average doctor earns far more than almost any other profession, maybe other than lawyers, right? Or, you know, when we talk about profession. And yet they're really benefiting, that kind of wage is benefiting on the misery of others. Now, I can't agree with that. The underlying premise of all of that is absolutely out of harmony with love. Absolutely. Now, years ago, when doctoring first started, it wasn't like that. A doctor was sort of like the same pay as an engineer, and the same pay as a metal worker, and the same pay as a carpenter and everything, and sometimes even less, right? But now it's changed in such a way because all of you have a terrifying amount of fear, and anybody that helps you with your fear, you're prepared to reward the maximum amount possible. You understand? Lawyers help you with your fear, so you're willing to pay them $500 an hour. Doctors help with your fear, so you're willing to pay them a couple $100 an hour, right? Because they help you with what you're afraid of, right? So fundamental problems with all of this system, right? And I could go on for days about the fundamental problems of all of these different systems that we see on Earth. Now, if we look at the therapy system, there's a presumption that the people know what they're talking about in terms of how to cure your problems. And what I'm saying to you is most of them don't, because they do not understand the soul, and they do not understand the spirit body, and they do not understand the spirit world, and they do not understand the person's own emotional psychology.
I don't even think they understand how the brain works.
Of course they don't. Yeah, the brain is one of the most complex physical organisms in the universe, and it's going to be many, many centuries before humans understand how the brain works if they continue researching it the manner that they are, which is all to do with physical research and not anything to do with the relationship between the soul, the spirit body, and the human physical body. Now, that can all change, but until it does, there's not going to be a huge amount of progress in these areas. There's only going to be progress in the physical, and that's it. And as you can see from the results, that more and more people are presenting at younger and younger ages with psychological problems, to the point of suicidal psychological problems. More and more people are presenting with that, even though there is all this supposed help.
But that goes back to this.
Which is indicating that it's not helping. Yep.
largely?
It's largely to do with this. Right? It's largely to do with the fact that nobody is getting educated with how the soul works.
That they can feel hard things.
That they can feel hard things. Nobody has any confidence in that. And most parents, as soon as they see their child cry, they're in distress. The parents themselves are in more distress when their soul cries when the child cries than the child is.
I actually think they're in therapy because I don't want to feel.
Frequently that's the case. And understanding that relationship is very important. But also, what spirit influence are they under? And all these other things are not considered because nobody wants to do any research on that either, right? So the general problem on earth is there's a lack of education. In all the areas we need education. That's the real problem. Education is the solution to your problems. Getting more education and understanding how to use it. Right? Now that's not going to happen by you talking to somebody, that's going to happen by you listening to somebody. Like, completely the opposite thing. You're going to need to listen.
You just saved me a lot of money.
So...
But you're going to need to feel something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not looking forward to
it. Yeah, that's right. See, even when people hear the solution, they go, but I don't want to do that. So I'd like to do the other thing. Thank you very much. And that's why we've got the problems we have now, is because the average person doesn't want to... They hear the truth, and even after they've heard it, remember the whole point of this morning was, this question, wasn't it? If I was more principled, what changes would I make? Right? So if I was more principled about my emotion, what changes would I make about dealing with my emotion? Can you see? I would want to deal with it myself. I wouldn't want to dump it on somebody else. I wouldn't want to dump it on my partner or my friends or even on a therapist, really. Like, they've got enough problems of their own, right? So I wouldn't want to dump it on them either. If they're willing to help me with truth, that's worth paying for.
Yeah.
Right? However, my feeling is the truth should be free. So anybody who's helping with the truth, if they're really motivated truthfully, they should provide it for free. Not charge you for it. They should provide it for free. That's what we do. We provide the truth for free for that reason. Right? So anybody who knows truth, the more they know and appreciate and really understand love, they will want to give it to you for free. Now, you might want to help them out. I understand that. You might want to donate to them. People donate to Mary and I all the time. And that's how we keep living and still doing it for free. But what began first was us doing it for free. You didn't pay me first. You didn't donate to me first. In fact, for nearly 5 years, when I started teaching, for nearly 5 years, I didn't receive a single donation from anybody. Right? We did everything for free and got no donations at all from anybody. Right? So that's the kind of dedication it's going to take. And the person who actually understands truth understands that too. They get that as well. Right? And so this is where I see a lot of problems arise, is that we don't understand many of the principles because we've never been educated in them, and we don't understand the power of them when we live by them. Yep. And that's what we need to learn to do. Yep. Without doing that, you are not going to work through any of your sinful emotion. Any of it. We're going to be talking in 20 years' time and you still have not worked through your sinful emotion. Right? Because to do that, you're going to have to be educated, and then you're going to have to personally take action on the education you've received. Nobody else can do that for you. Not a single person. No spirit. God cannot. God will not, because God gave you free will. So God's not going to do it. No person in the spirit world who actually loves you will do it. And no person on earth who loves you will do it for you either. They may educate you, but they're not going to help you do you need to do it. You need to even develop within yourself the will to do it for your own sake. Right? This is what self-responsibility means. Right? To be completely self-responsible means that you are developing even your own desire to feel even your own emotions without needing anybody else's help to do so. Now, somebody who comes along and helps you with truth or love or humility or faith, they're giving you a gift. It's a great gift. So I'm not decrying the gift at all. And it's essential when a person gives you this gift in that manner, freely, that you listen for your own sake. Right? But if you don't, that will not be their fault. If no change happens in you in 10 years, that won't be the person who taught you fault. If they taught you truth, it'll be the fault of the person listening who didn't want to apply it. Right? This is what all of us need to come to terms with. We have our life as it is right now because we have either, number one, refused to hear truth, or two, refused to apply it. Make sense? There's no other reason. Right? There's truth available to you. It's been available for centuries. Right? But on earth it's like, there's so many forces trying to mask it, cover it over, make out that it's wrong, tell you that it's wrong, all these things. So there's so many forces on earth trying to influence you into believing that truth is not even available, that you can't really ever find it, so that you don't search and find it and then apply it and then benefit. So this is the thing we need to address the most. What is the time? Because it feels about close to 1 here. So I don't know if I want to go further with this discussion. I feel it's very prone now to your addictions in play. You follow me? And one of the reasons why we got you to do it was because you're the person who needs to decide to be more principled. You're the person who needs to learn how to become sincere. And you're the person, when you do that, will probably make changes. Make sense? You'll do that.
If I could just point out one thing that I noticed with a lot of the answers is that until you are able, a lot of you are sort of speaking like as if principles are just sort of abstract. Oh, I need to heal my relationship with mum and dad. You know, I've heard that. You know, I need to just be more truthful with people. But when you really meditate on this question, reflect on this question, you will find that there's very specific things, specific areas where you're breaking God's principles every day, and you will see, yes, if I'm more sincere, I will change this thing. So it won't be just, you're going to find it hard to progress if you just go, I need to be more loving to people. Because that's a great way to sort of let yourself off the hook, because what does that really mean? And, when you get more sincere, you'll be more specific.
Yeah. So an example of that is many of you have a coffee in the day, don't you, still? How many of you still have coffee? Yeah, a lot of you, right? So let's be honest, a lot of you have coffee still, tea, whatever. You don't realise that as a substance, it's actually helping you detune from your emotional condition. The purpose of coffee, the reason why it's so worldwide, is because it helps you detune from your emotional condition. That's why it became such a big force on earth, and it's also why thousands, tens of hundreds of thousands of acres of land have been cleared, like really forests that used to have huge amount of variety have all been cleared for the sake of coffee, because it helps you avoid your emotions. And as you can see, one of the biggest problems humanity has is I shouldn't have to feel hard emotions. And if a substance, coffee, helps you, you're going to take it while you have that emotion. So the fact that you're taking it is indicative of the fact that you believe this. I should not have to feel hard emotions. I should not have to make hard decisions. People say, but I love my coffee. And I said, no, you don't love it, you're addicted to it. Right? If you could actually feel the physiological effects of it on your body and you were really sensitive to it, you would find that just taking a tiny little bit of it enhances fear to such large degrees that it's so damaging to you physiologically, right? And emotionally, by the way. Right? But you're having it because it helps you mask fear with other feelings like adrenaline and the feeling of like being hyped up, right? That's why you're attracted to it. It helps you deny your fear by thinking your fear is something else other than fear, right? That's why the whole world's addicted to the stuff, right? And I understand. I used to have it. I get the motivation, but fundamentally it's because you don't want to have to feel hard things, right? A lot of your fundamental things you do, even at the physical level, is going to be because of beliefs you have. Beliefs you have about your soul. And this is why we need to get on to the topic of what are those beliefs you have about the soul and are they even right, you know? Because if we don't discuss that with you, you're gonna go, well, how does my soul work? Oh, well, it's just this sort of, it's not a furry thing, is it? It's not like an animal, but it's just this fuzzy logic thing, you know, like that some persons come up with as a concept, you know, in history, just to sort of describe myself, without there being any science behind what it actually is and how it actually works. And so the average person, when they hear the word soul, it's just like, oh, now we're talking about some metaphysical New Age thing, are we? Or the word soul is actually mentioned in the Bible, you know, but in the Bible it actually says the soul that is sinning will die. So it actually says the soul can actually die in the Bible, even though the average person doesn't realise that because it's in the Old Testament of the Bible. But there's a lot of references to the soul historically, but nobody really knows anything about it on Earth, you know. Hardly anybody knows anything about it, how it works, how it functions, what how it receives, how it gives, what definition it has in terms of how it controls the two bodies, the physical and the spirit body. Most people have no idea about any of that, and the reason then when we feel upset in our soul, we think that a substance in the end is going to solve the soul problem, you know, because we don't understand the soul. No substance on earth is going to solve your soul problems. No drug, no food, no anything. Not a physical thing on earth is going to solve your soul problems. Your soul problems have to be solved by understanding the soul. That's how the problems are solved. Yep. And so, you know, when people say, oh, I really found that ayahuasca helped me to really connect with my soul, what a load of crock of rubbish, you know, like it's really rubbish. It did not help you. What it did, in fact, is damaged your connection with your own soul and actually put you potentially, and actually, in the command of other people's souls, spirits, who helped you connect to your soul now, connect to your bodies, not your soul, and did things to you which had an effect on you. That's what it did.
And it reinforced the belief that I shouldn't have to feel hard things. Because any of you who've sat in your resistance realise that that's a pretty hard thing, to seek truth from a point of sin, to deal with get through your blocks to emotion. That feels hard at times. Yeah. And many people take so-called plant medicine to avoid that feeling of, oh, there's work I have to do in order to change my life, to see more truth, to feel better.
So
many people say to me things like, you know, oh, it's a natural substance, so why couldn't we take it? And I go, what are you talking about? There's plenty of poisonous, actually deadly poisonous natural substances. You're going to take them as well? No, you only want to take the ones that help you avoid hard things. That's what the ones you want to take, right? And this is the trouble. The majority of us are so dedicated to avoiding hard things. Yeah? Time?
Yep, time for a break.
Time for a break.